So what's the difference between season 2 of Community and Diarrhea?
Uh-oh. What?
Season 2 of Community makes our listenership go down. Diarrhea makes our listenership go way down.
Very nice, very nice.
All right, welcome to the Zeitgeist Lab podcast collections. Those words aren't in the right order, but that's okay. I'm done worrying about that shit. This is I'm Alex. I'm joined by Brian, and you may have heard the third voice there is one Mr. Jordan Lane. This is like his fourth time joining us now. So I'm just going to give like a brief introduction here. Basically, we fell in love with Canada, or the idea of Canadian content, and we're committed to continuing going on with other seasons. Season 4 will be coming soon, but we got a lovely offer from Jordan that he wanted to do, continue showing us obscure Canadian content, and the offer was just too good to pass up. So we're going to let him kind of guide us in the ways of CanCon once a month going forward, just to keep our Canadian green card in case we decide to cross the border. So Jordan, thank you for being with us tonight. Your first official role as our new creative consulting producer. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Actually, I have Brian to thank. I saw his tweet about manifesting a fillet of fish as I was leaving the house to run some errands, and I manifested one for lunch on my way back home, and it really was just, it hit the spot. It was a great idea. So thanks, buddy.
Disgusting.
Anytime.
Speaking of the Fentoozler, aka Brian, how are you doing this evening, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it at work all day.
Oh, yeah. Even while you were dropping that plop?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if we want to continue our poop Treon talk.
I mean, I'm always up for that. All right, so this is going to be in front of the paywall. It's going to be like a monthly thing. This is what we need, guys, to before we get into anything.
Did you mean in front of the paywall or behind the paywall?
In front of the paywall. This is going to be in front of the paywall.
Great.
Everyone, the whole Grundle is going to be able to hear this, learn more about Canada. But this is what we need to tackle before we get into it. We need like a clever name for this reoccurring episode, because it's not part of a season anymore. It's not a Patreon episode, but we need some sort of catchy name.
How about the Zeitgeist Lab Collections Diplomatic Outreach Program?
Ooh, okay. What if we...
Brian, what's your cat's name?
Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom! That's an amazing cat name. Holy shit.
Yeah, I just call her Doom for short, but yeah, she likes to crawl around when I'm podcasting now.
That's awesome.
Now that you'll be joining us more regularly, get ready to hear multiple times Brian going, "Fuck off, Doom. Fuck off. Get the fuck out of here."
I've heard him tell his cat to fuck off, but I've never heard him refer to it by name. It's kind of the... That is the other side of the coin to your voice-activated cat feeder. Kind of like two recurring cat-based audio bits on your show.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so diplomatic outreach. I like that idea, but I want something more violent. Like, what's the opposite of diplomatic outreach? Like,
I
something
suppose just
sanctions?
an invasion.
Invasion.
Yeah, sanctions. I don't know, but it's a cultural exchange, right? I'm thinking of it like soft power. Kind of building, strengthening our bond between the two nations by helping us understand one another better through the sharing of culture.
I don't know. I stopped listening after you said soft power, because that's what I call my diarrhea. So that's kind of started thinking this. All right, yeah, okay. Well, let's go with
We'll come up with some better ones.
Yeah, If the Grundle has any ideas, you know where to find us at ZG Lab Pod. We're always here for your suggestions, unless your name's Buttermuffin155, in which case, get fucked. All right, well, look, guys, I wanted to start this this experiment with. I'm gonna make a drink here, because I didn't have time before we started. So I've tried becoming like a bit of a bartender lately. and it's not going great. But I had I got this little. I think part of the problem is that I just kind of pour whatever, and then it turns out to be like shitty.
Right.
So my wife is really digging Moscow Mules, but I think ginger beer is disgusting.
Really? It's one of my favorite things.
Well, and I love ginger ale, so that leaves her confused as to why I don't like it. But so we've got this vodka, and I found this drink called a Mackenzie. So what I've got here is a half a shot of vodka, a full shot of Bailey's Irish cream, half shot of amaretto, and then you just top it with almond milk.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of like a White Russian, but with more alcohol,
more almond,
less calories. Yeah, because it's not half and half. Half and half is a lot more than almond milk. So
definitely.
Are you guys beving anything tonight?
I am drinking some hot mint tea. I don't drink anymore. I quit about a year and a half ago, and actually just realized as I was watching you pour that shot that I have tying into your Canadian Ska series a Stomp Records shot glass around somewhere that I will happily send to you guys because I don't drink anymore. If one of you wants that,
you don't keep shot glasses around for decorative. You're not like one of those people? No,
I've got more than enough shit decorating my house without having to like still kind of, I'd rather just kind of not have booze stuff around. But I know that somebody wants that stuff, so I feel weird throwing it out.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I've got a lot of shit decorating my house too, but then my wife usually asks me to go clean the bathroom, so that's how I take care of that.
Nice.
All right, so Jordan, why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about? I mean, I guess to stroke our own egos, you seem to enjoy the Canadian season, so you wanted to have us keep talking about it. But maybe what is your goal for this? Other than, is it just to introduce us to more Canadian stuff? Is it to get your name out there? Is this all just about self-promotion? Or
well, I won't lie. I will do probably anyone's podcast because I just love. Yeah, I love getting my name out there and having people listen to my thoughts on things. I'm not gonna make any bones about that.
Right.
But yeah, it's I really think that this is fun. I think that there are also there is so much stuff that is going to kind of sit under the radar forever, partly for reasons of just an aging population, and then partly a lot of the stuff that I kind of want to talk about is things that haven't necessarily made the transition over to the internet era. There's a lot of things that aren't necessarily on streaming services. These things only exist as CDs or records or whatever. Or in the case of this movie, it sat without, as far as I know, a DVD release for a very, very long time. And then just had an anniversary screening a couple years ago here. But so I'm going to use it as an opportunity to talk about what I think are unsung pieces of CanCon, things that I really like that I think people should be more aware of. And then, it's just it's an excuse for me to come on and talk to a couple of people that I like about things that I'm into. And that's just fodder for a very fun, easy conversation. So,
okay, perfect. So we're here to talk about the movie Way Downtown, which is a film from 2000. It makes me feel incredibly old because it's now 2022. When I look at this thing, I'm like, this thing's from 2000? Because I thought that stuff in 2000 was more high tech than that, because surely it's only like 2005 now, right? So it's kind of like a mind fuck to watch things from when I was in high school, because then I'm sadly reminded that I'm so far removed from that time in my life now. But yeah, Jordan, why don't you tell us a little bit about this film and why it was your first pick as we kind of dive into some of the more obscure CanCon.
Well, there's a few reasons for it being the first pick. Number one, this was I hadn't, until I watched it today, seen this movie since it came out. I was out of town for that anniversary screening I mentioned, and unfortunately didn't make it. But at the time this came out, I absolutely loved this movie. This was the summer I graduated high school, and so it was I think I saw this 5 or 6 times in the theater while it was running, because I was just I just loved it. There's so that's part of it. A big part of it is that it's shot in Calgary. The director, Gary Burns, has done a number of films that are set in Calgary. Suburbanators is another one that there's a lot of just great Calgary cruising shots with Calgary bands playing on the soundtrack. And it's just, it's very nostalgic for me because mid 90s to 2000s, that was my teenage years. I was coming of age, getting out, learning about music, going to shows, dating, all that kind of stuff for the first time. So I was curious if coming back to this, it would still resonate for me. And then the third part about it was that I thought it would be a fun opportunity to introduce you to Don McKellar, who comes up regularly on the 155 podcast, with Josiah doing an impersonation of him. But I think he's a fantastic actor. And this is a really, really fun kind of minor role for him. That's kind of the main things that made me want to do this one. Also, I think you guys hadn't done a film yet, so I thought that might be an interesting change of pace.
We did Strange Brew.
Oh, right.
We did that one. It's not movies as ones that we have not tackled before. But I think it's good to have like someone who actually knows the movie. Because when we talked about Strange Brew, like we watched it once and then we had that fucking butter muffin guy on there. I don't even know what he was on talking about. But so, I mean, since you picked this, I kind of want to let you lead the discussion, or if you have talking points, certainly if you want, we can give our thoughts on it or talk about it or however you want to tackle it. But I kind of want to put you in the driver's seat here because I'm lazy.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I think would be kind of a cool setup is I'll give a quick breakdown of what the movie's about. Okay. And then I'm just kind of curious before I kind of get into my impressions and notes and kind of specific discussion points. I wanted to hear your guys' overall impressions of it, whether you liked it or not, what you did or didn't, etc. Okay. So Way Downtown is it's a kind of black comedy. It's a corporate satire. It's set turn of the millennium in Calgary. And basically it's about four people who work in the same office and they make a bet about They bet a month's salary on who can stay indoors the longest. So Calgary's downtown has something called a plus 15 walkway system, and it's a series of glass corridors that are 15 feet above street level. And these connect all of the downtown, not all, but many of the downtown core buildings, including apartment buildings and hotels. And so the conceit of this movie is that all four of these people work in an office and their homes are also linked by the plus 15s to everything. So they could conceivably not go outside ever. So we kind of drop in on, officially, according to the synopsis, is day 28 of this bet. They say it's day 24 at the start. And when he's crossing off things on the calendar, it's day 27. So it's ambiguous. Okay. This whole movie is very, very, it has a very surreal and kind of magical realist element to it. There's a lot of kind of weird things going on that don't necessarily make sense. So it's kind of a fantasy and fantastical element too. But, at its core, it is it's a dark comedy and it's, at times a pretty mean movie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I'm kind of curious what you guys thought about it.
Well, I've been hogging up all the airtime so far, so I want to let Brian start here. I know he watched it because he said he did. It's not always a sure bet that he's going to consume the content we talk about, but
no, I love this movie.
Nice.
Yeah, this was I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it going into it, but I just don't have the attention span for movies, so I was like, oh man, I'm this is gonna be a chore, and then 5 minutes into it, I was like, this is amazing. This is so much fun.
Nice.
So wait, what at the beginning really caught you and pulled you in then? Because I'll get to my full thoughts later, but for me, it took longer than 5 minutes for me to be sold on this movie. So, do you remember what moment kind of grabbed you, Brian?
No, I think once they kind of revealed, the plot, the bet of it all, and I was like, okay, I'm in. This is going to be really interesting. Yeah, no, I fucking love this movie. I thought the opening scene was really stylish and really cool, and it kind of made me think it was going to be about something else. I thought they're gonna pull, because the opening theme is so stylish and stuff that I thought, oh, this could be a heist movie or something.
Yeah, it does. The elevator scenes at the start feel very caperish.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and also even just the aesthetic choice, I'm bad at describing it or even knowing what to call it, but the way in the opening credits, all the actors' names are like continually on the screen, like moving back and forth and like just repeated over and over again. That very, like, to me, that definitely seems like kind of like mafia or like heistish type aesthetic at the beginning for sure.
But yeah, I thought there's a lot of really cool symbolism in this. Like, I was trying to figure out like what the superhero like represents and like what his little ant colony thing represented. Like, because like, you know what I mean, like the ant thing that he has.
Yeah,
I was trying to figure out like what that kind of like represented.
That's really funny that you say that, because I wrote down that was so on the nose. I thought it was actually like way too obvious that it was supposed to be for them kind of stuck in their environment.
Yeah. That makes sense now. That makes sense to my stone brain now.
Right. So are you saying you watched it sober?
No, of course not.
Okay, so it didn't make sense to your stone brain then, but your stone brain now understands it?
No, someone's explained it to me.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
But like, and then because it was like trapped in the year 2000, I was like, I kind of watched it with like 2000 brain as well. I like teenage me would have loved like the narration of it, like where he's talking about like. Where he's sort of like where the character, they're the main guys kind of pontificating in his head. Like that always attracted me to those kind of like anti-hero kind of rants. Yeah. Movies really attracted me back then. So yeah, I kind of got that vibe from it too a little bit.
Yeah, it was definitely part of the appeal for me. Was I very much identified with that kind of stuff at the time. Men of a certain age. I was also reading a lot of David Foster Wallace at the time. That sort of thing. And it's like, there's a certain kind of like this certain teenage nihilism almost to it. That like it's still very appealing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So for me. Sorry, if you had more, Brian, please continue.
I forgot what I was gonna say. And like another thing I was trying to figure out, like, what does this represent, was like the astronaut little game that Sadly Bradley plays. Like, what is that? I don't know what that kind of represented, but like that recurring motif, like, stuck out to me for some reason.
Yeah.
I thought that part was interesting. I also would say I'm not sure what the symbolism is there, but one thing that I thought was interesting was when he's playing that game, I think there's one time he actually wins and Neil Armstrong
at the
hits
very
the
end
moon correctly or whatever, and it starts playing like very loudly and obviously the American national anthem, which again just kind of reminded me of like what you, Jordan, and so many of our guests have said, like how important like America is to Canada in a certain way, and like that really stuck out to me when it got to that part.
Well, funny little factoid about that. That game was actually developed by a local company called Frequency Labs, who eventually became iStock Photo, who I used to work for. Who were eventually bought out by Getty Images. So one of my old coworkers does screaming background vocals in the like screaming booth scenes when you kind of hear just these cuts of like a man screaming. That's one of my old coworkers. His brother is the security guard. It's very funny to kind of like one of my friend Rena, who's a guest on our ADHD podcast, her sister did wardrobe for this movie. So there's just like, all kinds of people 6 degrees from me in this movie, which is cool.
So are you profiting directly from us having watched this?
No. Nor is anyone in my life. Right. I strongly suspect that an additional 3 views on the YouTube, actually, and only 1 because I had to pirate this for you guys.
That's right. We didn't count as a stat or anything. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to retire off that, unfortunately. So
damn.
So, Alex, I'm curious about kind of the rest of your thoughts.
This movie is very intriguing. I suffer too, like from what Brian was saying, is like I have a hard time paying attention to movies, like especially when I'm watching them at home. And so much of that is just like, I mean, it's this fucking thing. It's I can't not be looking at my phone. So I had Tuesday off. My wife did not. My kids were at school and daycare. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch this because there's no distractions other than potentially my phone. But like, it kind of fucked with me because as I started watching, like, I'm like, did I stop paying attention? Because I'm like 10 minutes in. I'm still not really sure what this movie is about or what I'm what I'm supposed to be getting out of this movie. And I've just like, I was really intrigued by, the cinematography, like the way the scenes are kind of lit, and like the characters, and like Brian said, very stylish at the beginning, but I had no idea like what the fuck was going on. And to me, you guys talked about like the narration element, and I think that can be done really well or really poorly. And at first I was kind of on the fence. Like, I don't know if this is working or not. And so like, as the whole thing kind of started to, expose itself or reveal itself, it became very intrigued. I will say by the end, I was very invested in what was going on. I was very interested. I was enjoying it. But I think for me and the way that I look at and consume movies, I think it's one that I would enjoy more watching it again and like kind of picking up on some of the stuff at the beginning that maybe I should have picked up on but didn't until the plot kind of was understood. So I think it's one that probably deserves more than one watch for me to say like, yeah, this is a great movie. It's not a bad movie, and it's certainly a very intriguing movie, but it's an acquired taste. And that's to say you acquire that taste throughout, like as the movie kind of happens.
That makes sense. So I'm curious what you kind of liked and didn't like about it, or what you found intriguing. Maybe is the better way to frame it.
I just thought like it's very intriguing because like all of these. Because at first I look like you see like this office and these people, and there's like the sad guy and the protagonist and kind of like the chauvinistic asshole. I'm like, okay, is this going to kind of be like Office Space? Sorry if I'm speaking out of turn because I've never actually seen that movie. But like, so it's like I'm imagining, oh, is this what Office Space is? Am I just being forced to watch like the Canadian Office Space or something? And then suddenly it becomes, more existential and nihilistic, like you said, and then just kind of get pulled into, okay, so what's going on? And maybe, I don't know if I just missed a key thing at the beginning or I'm just stupid, but for me it took like maybe 25 minutes to a half hour till I realized that what they were talking about was this bet about about the bet that they're partaking in. But what I thought was intriguing was just like the way they set up this tension, because it seems like it's supposed to be on one face like an Office Space, office type comedy, and like I would see that start to get set up in the interactions with the main character, and apparently I've forgotten their names already. The main character and the main female.
Yeah, Tom or Todd, depending on who you believe in the movie, is the main character's name.
Okay.
And then the female lead is Sandra.
Sandra, right. So they're talking, I think, okay, this is going to be like the classic sort of back and forth, like he's going to say something kind of raunchy and she's going to laugh, like, typical like 90s type stuff that would be clearly canceled in this day and age. But then it turns into like this weird, almost like suspense thing, because he's like, oh, that air is just recycled. It was probably never clean to start with. And then she's looking at it and they like cut to the vent and there's like, it's all suspenseful. Like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Like, is it a suspenseful moment? Is it humorous? Is it tense? And like, I was just very intrigued by where is this going? Like at a certain point I was like, what's coming next? And it was just unpredictable enough for me to be like, oh, I'm getting a lot out of this, but not so unpredictable that the answer was always like, well, no, like the viewer never could have imagined this or predicted this or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like it's so bizarre that like, I feel like the core of it, the central plot of the movie, this thing around the bet is the very dark kind of part of the movie. That's where all the kind of the tension and all the kind of themes of like dehumanization, depersonalization, alienation, isolation, all the Asians, all that stuff kind of focuses around the main story. Masturbation. And then they use these other kind of side plot elements as like the comic relief. Like the shoplifting boss was like that's a very fucking funny bit. It doesn't necessarily have anything to serve the main plot other than the vase thing, but it's very funny. The stuff with Sadly I'm Bradley is sad and funny at the same time, and a lot of that is in Don McKellar's performance. There was something else that's like specifically very funny that I can't remember right now, that I was going to mention. Shoot.
The Tom or Todd, his friend, I thought he had like a lot of comedic relief, especially his interactions with the mall security guard. I found very humorous.
Yeah, I love the security guard. He's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, Randy, the kind of first character that we see along with Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I was making sure we're on the same page, talking about the right person. So, oh yeah, that's what the other one I was going to refer to. The B plot with the boyfriend. There's so many just like surreal, weird moments with that, like him just biting the flowers. That was very, very just like, where the fuck did that come from? And it's so funny. But again, like it's this very over the top, absurd humor in what is otherwise like a fairly serious, intense kind of satire.
Yeah, well, and like I said, it left me guessing. Like at one point, I was like, "Oh, is this actually going to be like an erotic type thriller?" Because you have like the girl on the payphone and like her shirt's like bouncing up and down. And there's another point where like you see her bra, and then the other coworker. Fuck, I wish I remember these characters' names, but he's trying to like hook up with the other engaged woman who's crying at the beginning of something. Is this going to be like an erotic thing? And it doesn't really pan out that way. But they explore that to a degree. And like I said, it's just kind of all over the place, but not in a scattered or unthought out way.
Yeah. It's interesting because I kind of feel like this movie is just, it's all about tension. And it's all about tension without release. And I think that these repeated sexual encounters that never fully consummate sort of delve into that theme. These people aren't able to leave their building, so they can't get kind of that release. Everything is about like this being coiled tightly like a spring and having nowhere to put all of that energy. So I guess, Alex, unless you had any other thoughts, I'll kind of talk about some of my specific kind of notes on this stuff that I was thinking about.
No other thoughts. Although I was interested to know, because you live in Calgary, do you live downtown? Do you have access to this thing, this plus 15 on a regular basis, or?
I do not, but when I was, let me see here, between 18 and 20, I worked at a deli that was on the third floor of the Bank of Montreal building here, which was a plus 15 cafe. And I had to pause that scene up front with the redheaded barista guy a few times to check whether that was the cafe that I used to work in, but it was not. So,
So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. We could probably talk about the plus 15 forever because I find it fascinating. So I'll just stop there and let you continue with your notes.
No, I mean, if you have questions about the plus 15, I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
Does anyone walk outside?
Oh, sure.
Downtown? Okay.
I feel like most people actually walk outside. The plus 15 is definitely more popular in the winter.
Sure.
But there's still a fair bit of like street level traffic during the daytime.
Is it a government initiative, or was it a collaboration between private entities?
I suspect that it was solely a municipal thing, but I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I just think that a lot of places would benefit from that. I don't know why necessarily, because also it seems kind of stupid, but I'm like, fuck, I wish Salt Lake City had something like that. Like, the closest thing we have is one sky bridge in between two malls downtown. Like, why don't we just have that everywhere?
Nice. Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of get into a bit of my stuff now. So like I was saying, like this whole thing is all about tension, and there's a lot of like cinematographic, I don't know what the fuck the word is, but let's say filmmaking techniques that they use to kind of like really enhance that. So you guys may have noticed there's a lot of color palette shifts. It shifts regularly from like a blue tint to a really kind of sickly yellow-green tint. And specifically that yellow tint is like, it creates a kind of squirmy feeling. there's constant wardrobe shifts on characters from one scene to the next. You know, it's implied that this is 10 seconds later, but they're wearing an entirely different outfit.
Okay, so I'm not imagining that because I'm like, I don't think that's what he was wearing at the beginning. And you also mentioned a few minutes ago that it's Tom or Todd. I didn't catch that change, so...
Yeah. Well, that's again, there's so many things about this that are just like, they add to that feeling of surrealism and doubt and that sort of dreamishness. You know, they do it fairly explicitly with things like where Tom is kind of swim floating through the mall there, TD Square. But then otherwise, sometimes it is much more subtle. And so, yeah, so it's interesting though, they really... You don't necessarily clock it, the wardrobe shifts, because they try to keep them tonally similar. So Tom is always wearing a shirt and tie in the same color, with the tie a shade darker than the shirt, until the very end when he finally gets a striped tie. And what's her name? Why have I forgotten the female lead again?
Sandra?
Thank you, Sandra. Her cardigan and shirt change a few times, but they usually invert. So it'll be like a pink shirt and a blue cardigan switching to a blue shirt and a pink cardigan, and those kind of things. So your brain doesn't necessarily clock it because it's not that different. But you subconsciously notice it, and it adds to that feeling of kind of you can't trust yourself or anything that's kind of going on in this narrative, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I think I didn't notice it on any character other than Tom Todd, but I just thought, because there was one point at which my wife came down to grab lunch, and I was talking to her, and I didn't pause the movie because it was just on my laptop hooked up to my computer, so I didn't have like a remote. And so then I was like, oh fuck, did I miss something where he had to change his outfit? Because that's definitely not what he was wearing earlier. Because I definitely remember at the kind of towards the beginning of the movie thinking, that's really weird that he's wearing like a forest green shirt and then like an exact matching tie, like the exact same color. I'm like, why? Who would do that? And then later when that wasn't what he was wearing, I was like, oh fuck, am I just like, did something happen and I missed it? Or
yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that. I think that also, so this was shot digitally and almost all handheld. Which again also really adds to that kind of feeling of unease. All of the shots of the characters are framed super, super close up. We almost, every time we get a shot of a character, it's almost always the face, and we can't even see like the whole face. It's that close, which again really adds to that kind of discomfort. It's you get that like that claustrophobia, I guess, is like the kind of big overall aesthetic theme. That creating that feeling of nowhere to go, not only through the plot but also through, you know, film techniques. So
right,
yeah.
Can I ask you something really quick? Did you? I know that you obviously do a lot with like fashion. Have you studied film? Because you sound like very knowledgeable about what you're saying here.
Not at all. I don't notice. It's funny. I'm actually like, I guess a fairly late bloomer in terms of like understanding aesthetics. All of that stuff mostly kind of came after I got into fashion, which was maybe, 15 years ago or something. But yeah, no, I don't actually watch a lot of movies. But after a number of years ago, helping a friend with a short film project, it really kind of like gave me a bit more, I guess, of a desire to pay attention to that stuff, and just kind of be more deliberate in my viewing. But again, part of why I notice all this stuff is because I've seen this movie a half dozen times at least, and this is stuff that for the most part I don't notice with movies, but I will clock that stuff on the second or third viewing, like you were talking about. You kind of notice these things. Gotcha. So yeah, I was like I said, I was coming back to this movie for the first time in like 20 years, and I just have a much more developed language for this stuff than I did as a teenager, which is really cool. So,
yeah, that is cool. And it just shows me that you are going to be the director of our Pooh Film Festival short that we submit next year. So.
Excellent. Yeah. Nice. So yeah, I felt like I was speaking of the wardrobe. It's interesting. I feel like it's actually fairly contemporary, and then maybe that's because retro works in 20-year cycles generally. But I don't feel like anything I saw people wearing would be particularly out of place. The one thing that really screamed 2000 to me was the love interest, the saleswoman who has that print shirt with the kind of Buddha with the mandala. Those tops, oh my god, you could not throw a rock without hitting 3 women wearing that top, like 97 to 2000. Okay. I think like 2 separate girls I dated in high school both had tops like that. It was just fucking everywhere, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I just still wear cargo pants and like band t-shirts. So like fashion changes around me and I don't give a shit. Like I don't notice any of that stuff. Like I'll look at stuff like this, I'm like, holy shit, fashion has changed, but like I don't notice it in my day-to-day life.
Right.
To me, the only thing that felt like the year 2000 to me was the main character's haircut. I was like, that's a very 2000 haircut.
There was one other thing that was specifically 2000 to me, which was, I don't know if this is American slang at all, but at one point somebody uses the phrase boot it for like hurrying. And bootin' it was a very late 90s, early 2000s kind of like slang phrase in Canada, or at least Ontario and Calgary, which is the 2 places I was during that time. So,
No, that's not a phrase I'm familiar with.
No, and I haven't heard it for a very long time. So that's why it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is from 2000.
Let's bring it back.
Can we? Okay, that leads me to a question that is completely not about this.
Sure.
But since you're Canadian, maybe you can answer it. In Strange Brew, why do they always say take off? Is that like a common insult in like Ontario or Canada at large? Or is that's strictly just in that movie?
I think that's literally a phrase that Bob and Doug invented, take off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They actually had like a novelty record with the guy from Rush called Take Off.
Okay.
Geddy Lee. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So it was just something of their own design. It's not like a common phrase you hear.
I feel like it's their I
at least
caramba.
At that point. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah. The other one, it was interesting to see payphones again. This was kind of the last days of the pre-cell phone era.
Right.
Let me see here. So I talked a little bit about that, the aesthetic end of it. Another element that I really liked, that kind of, when he's talking about ripping the city out of the ground and levitating it, in a bubble. That really, I don't know if you guys remember the, I think, 3rd TMNT video game, the Manhattan Project, where they like levitate Manhattan out of the ground, sort of like literally the same thing. So that made me think of that, which is kind of fun. Also, there was like references to, at one point they say dib, 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 and then Tom sits down at his desk and he says dob, fucking dob. Does that mean anything to you guys?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. So that's Canadian Scouts. So basically, you guys have Scouts, obviously Boy Scouts of America. We have Scouts Canada. And part of the pledge that opens and closes every meeting is DIB, which is an acronym for do your best. So the troop leader says dib, dib, dib. And all the troop members say, we'll dob, 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 which was do our best. Okay. So he says, so the one, Randy says dib, dib, dib as he's leaving. And then Tom sits down and he's like, dob, fucking dob. Okay. Again, very, very teenage nihilism.
Right.
I guess the only other kind of thing that I wanted to talk about this specifically, I'm curious if either of you have read or seen the movie of High Rise.
No.
So High Rise is, I think, a late 60s work by J.G. Ballard, who wrote Crash, bunch of other stuff, and Atrocity Exhibition. Anyway, he has this movie where basically this high-rise apartment building kind of gets closed off from society and basically becomes its own contained ecosystem, and it's about this kind of like anarchic social collapse. And I think that would actually make a really fun double feature with this movie, like because it's also a very dark kind of violent satirical comedy. To be honest, I liked that movie up until the ending. I thought the ending was just absolutely fucking awful. But yeah, it's I think that it would be an interesting kind of companion piece about like, you know, people left being hamsters in a cage.
Okay.
Yeah, then I'm just kind of curious how you guys felt about Don McKellar, one of our best Canadian exports.
I loved his character, like just the way he just slowly loses his mind, just stapling himself throughout the whole movie. Just great, yeah. I was wondering which one was Don McKellar.
Yeah, sadly, I'm Bradley. He's in so many movies. So he's written, directed a lot of great stuff. There's a movie called Last Night that's like very sad, but a really excellent movie. He also did a drama series that was about this Shakespeare company called Slings and Arrows, and that is so fucking funny if you can find that somewhere. But yeah, lots of good stuff.
He was younger than I thought. I mean, again, this is like 20 years ago. But when I hear like Josiah and Sam talking about him, I picture like a much older person. So it was interesting. And then it was interesting too. I guess like you said earlier, this was a minor role for him, but I was like, oh, I was under the impression that he was kind of like a bigger name, and then it's got this very, I mean, it's an important role to the movie, but very small in terms of, you know, screen time compared to the four leads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that I think that he's kind of like a kind of, I don't know, there's a certain type of actor who I think Don McKellar could have made it in Hollywood if he had wanted to, but I think he would way rather be doing like Canadian stuff for Canada. And so I feel like he's just a team player. I feel like he wouldn't have an ego about that kind of stuff. I think at some point I'll get you guys to watch a couple episodes of Twitch City, which was a series that he wrote and directed that's very, very fucking funny. Also about a shut-in who never leaves his apartment.
So I had two questions. I wanted to follow up on what Brian said, because I didn't have an answer, but I was curious on what your thoughts were, the symbolism behind the astronaut game that Don McKellar's character is playing throughout the movie.
I don't know that there's any symbolism per se to the content of the game itself in terms of it being a moon landing. But I think that the symbolism lies in him failing the game every time and then finally winning it. And that's like, you know, I feel like that's a metaphor for him crossing a point where maybe he doesn't want to die anymore. But that's pure speculation on my part.
Sure. Was this movie popular outside of Canada? Like, I don't remember it here, but that doesn't mean anything necessarily.
No, it had $1 million budget approximately, and I think grossed what was it? Like honestly, $50,000 or something.
What? It grossed $50,000?
Well, but that's Canadian filmmaking. You know, it's literally budget $1 million estimated. U.S. and Canadian gross $48,333. Opening weekend, U.S. and Canada $21,489.
So basically, it lost $1 million. Like it lost its whole budget.
This is what you can do when you have a government that makes arts grants. Is you can make these weird, fucking quirky movies that a small group of people really, really love, and they can be money losers. Like,
jeez.
And again, those are the kinds of things that I feel like you can do up here, which is why maybe someone like Don McKellar wants to hang around.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did you make of the ending then? Because did either of you guys ever see that movie? Gosh, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. But it was with Michael Keaton, Birdman or whatever. The ending of this reminded me a lot of the ending of that movie, where it's left up to you to determine what's really happening and what's not.
Yeah, I didn't see Birdman, so I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I honestly
don't know, because there is so much doubt and unreliable I want to say unreliable narration, but that's not really the case. The filmmaker in this case is the unreliable narrator, because we're getting all of these kind of conflicting pieces of information, and he's throwing all these kinds of red herrings at us, people switching clothes from one scene to another, all this kind of stuff. And so yeah, I really have trouble knowing how much of this movie is quote unquote real, like how much of this is actually taking place in the characters' worlds, and how much of this is not necessarily a hallucination, but maybe like a sort of imaginative projection of their own anxieties, and or just like literally a filmmaking metaphor for, whatever their emotional states or something. Right. Like I don't know at the end whether someone did actually jump out of the building, like whether that pop bottle full of marbles crashes beside him and somebody jumps. And of course, obviously the superhero that we've seen hanging out for the whole movie rescues him. But again, what are we supposed to make of this superhero? Like, right. This is other than the superhero and him kind of floating through the hallways and those sequences, otherwise like a pretty grounded, if weird movie.
Yeah.
And so, there's just enough kind of like magical realism or surrealism to really kind of like, wonder about it. But honestly, I don't really have a kind of set interpretation of it. It's just kind of, honestly, it sounds stupid, but it's just kind of how the movie ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's just like, well, we got our 80 minutes worth. Let's cap this off. And so yeah, I honestly don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, we got our 80 minutes. Let's go out there and lose this $1 million, baby.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if $1 million budget is just the default IMDb guess for films that it doesn't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
So, there's a strong possibility that it was shot on a far cheaper budget than $1 million, but I don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brian, did you have any final thoughts, comments, questions?
Not really. No, I got sufficiently stoned during this episode.
Nice.
To the point where I'm just taking it all in. I'm not generating content anymore.
Typical. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for having us watch this. Like, I really enjoyed this. This is something I never would have seen. I thought, like, when you pitched the idea of doing CanCon, I was like, well, I don't know what is going to make us watch, like, Maple Leafs games or something, and then we're going to, like, relive hockey glory days or something. So, like, I appreciate that it's, like, something off the beaten path.
Yeah, no sports is the Jordan Lane guarantee.
Okay, perfect. That's great. So that, Brian, that means we'll never have to talk about Aaron Rodgers here with Jordan, unless you want to. We can always talk about Aaron Rodgers if you'd like. Because I've got plenty of thoughts.
I missed that.
Exactly. So, are there any typical goodbyes in Canada that we can end with? Like, how does a Canadian say goodbye? Is there?
Well, the national goodbye is actually take off hoser.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
All right.
Nice. Well,
take off, hoser.
Take off, hosers.
Take off, hosers.